section of the SAT. The SAT Math is by far the most coachable section of the test. Princeton Review students tend to get their highest score improvements in this section, and it's understandable to see why once you take a look. Well, there's a couple reasons why. First off, the answers to the question in the math section tend to have the answers that are most provable. What do I mean by this? Well, if you're looking between two answer choices and one's 5 and one's 6, you're not saying, is it 5 or is it 6? I don't know, both of them sound good. No, you work the question, you find your answer, you select your answer, you circle it, and you move on. There's none of that, I'm not sure. You find an answer, you move on. But there's another reason why we get such great score improvement, and that's because there's some really powerful techniques that you can use on the math section to improve your score. So let's get to know the math section. So, first off, what kind of math is on the SAT? Well, there are algebra questions, geometry questions, arithmetic, and harder algebra questions such as functions. Okay, let me ask you a question. How well did you do in algebra? Did you get at least a C? Well, what would a C be? That's like a 70%? What happens if you got a 70% on the SAT? Well, in the math, you'd be looking at well over a 600, which is a really good score. What's the average SAT math score? Like a 500? And that's about a 55%, which is about an F-. I don't get it. How come people don't do the same on the SAT as they did in high school? If all it was algebra, geometry, arithmetic, then shouldn't I do the same? Remember, there's more to it than that. Remember, the SAT started off as an intelligence test, which means it's a reasoning test. It's a test not so much of what you know as how you think. And so that's why the things that we focus on in this book and in this video can really help you improve your score. And that's why learning about the test can really help. So what kinds of questions are on the test? First off, you're going to see that there's two kinds of math questions. You're going to see problem-solving questions and gridding questions. Problem-solving questions should look really familiar to you. You've been doing problem-solving questions forever. There you have a question, and you've got some answer choices, and you select an answer. The donut question was like this. Gridding questions, on the other hand, might look more unfamiliar. Let's see what one looks like. As you see a question, and instead of answer choices, you see these bubbles that you're supposed to fill out. So let's do this one together. It says, in a group of 30 boys and girls, if 1/6 of the group are girls, then how many boys are in the group? Well, if 1/6 are girls, then that must mean that 5/6 are boys. 5/6 of 30, that's right, 25. So what do? We'll write a 2 and a 5, and then bubble in the 2 and bubble in the 5. And that's your answer. So where on the problem-solving questions, you just found your answer and bubbled that in the grid-ins, you have more than one bubble to fill out. So how many of these are on the test? Well, there are 3 scored sections. One 25-minute section that has all problem-solving, just 20 problem-solving questions. There's also going to be a 25-minute section that has 8 problem-solving and 10 grid-ins. And finally, there's going to be a problem-solving section at the end of the test that's going to be 20 minutes long, and it's going to contain 16 questions, and those 16 all problem-solving. So remember before we talked about order of difficulty? We said on the SAT some questions are easy, some are medium, some are difficult. Well, one of the nice things about the SAT Math section is there's a really straightforward order of difficulty. The questions at the beginning of the section are always easier than the questions at the end of the section. For an example, let's use that 25-minute section that has problem-solving questions and grid-ins. Questions 1 through 3 will probably be pretty easy, and questions 6 through 8, pretty hard. But then, once you get to question 9, the order of difficulty resets. So questions 9 through 11 are going to be pretty easy, and questions 16 through 18 are going to be pretty hard. So as you can see in the math section, we can tell which questions are considered easy, which questions are medium, and which questions are hard, depending upon where they fall within the section. So how does that help us? So what this means is that we can tell if a question is going to be easy, medium, or difficult just by looking at what number question it is. So we can tell whether or not it's a question we want to do or a question maybe we want to skip. Now, let me ask you a question. What would happen if all we did was do 2/3 of the test? All we did was the easies and mediums. We'd be only be getting 66% of the test right. Now, remember, 66% in school, that's an F. Or maybe if your teacher's generous, a D. But 66% on the SAT, that's like a 600. So this is, again, that note we're making about pacing. You don't need to do everything. Focus on the easies and the mediums first, then we'll worry about the hards. Let's take a look at some more things that we can do on the test.
So let's remember our friend Joe Bloggs. Yeah, Joe's not stupid, he's average or predictable. And on the SAT math section, he gets about a 500. But Joe's accuracy varies depending on the level of difficulty of the question. So on easy questions, Joe gets about 90% correct. Well, he should, they're easy. But Joe's rushing and he makes careless mistakes, so he doesn't get them all correct. On medium questions, the level of question is getting a little harder, so Joe only gets about half of those right. And then on hard questions, they're getting really hard, so Joe only gets about 10% of them right. So let me ask you something. If we were going to ask Joe's advice on one of those types of questions, which one would it be? Well, would we want his help on easy questions? Well, maybe. He gets most of them right, but we're going to get most of the easy questions right even without Joe. Well, what about the medium questions? Joe wouldn't be much help because he only gets about half of those right. And on hard questions, Joe doesn't get many right at all. In fact, he misses just about every single hard question. But think about that. If we know what answers Joe is going to choose, then we know which answers to eliminate. And if we can eliminate at least one answer choice, particularly on a hard question, we should always guess. So, what are our choices? What are our chances if we guess randomly on the SAT? Well, it would be, what, 1 in 5 or 20%? But Joe, on hard questions, only gets them right 10% of the time. So Joe, by attempting a hard question, is actually doing worse than he would do if he randomly guessed. What I'm saying is that my cat, with pencils strapped to its paws, walking across an SAT answer choice, would do better than Joe would on the hard questions. Well, so how can this be? Well, remember that SAT math isn't hard because the math itself is hard. It's hard because the questions are tricky. So how does ETS make these questions so tricky? Well, one thing they do is that they have trap answers. And trap answers are wrong answers that are so psychologically appealing, they just scream, "Pick me." So let's take a look at what these answer choices look like on a hard question. Number 18. Jasmine buys an apple pie on Tuesday. She eats 2/5 of the pie that night. On Thursday, Jasmine takes out the pie again and eats 2/5 of what is left. How much of the pie still remains uneaten? And the answers are A, 4/25, B, 1/5, C, 6/25, D, 9/25, or E, 3/5. So this is a hard question. We know because it's number 18. And Joe doesn't really know how to do this question. It's hard. So what he does is a very natural response. He plays with the numbers. He fiddles with them so that he can see kind of what comes out. And he tries to match that then to an answer choice. So let's look at the answers and see which ones are Joe Bloggs' answers. Well, what about A, 4/25? So Joe sees in the problem, well, 2/5, and he sees 2/5, and he's thinking, I'll multiply them together. Equals 4/25. Can the right answer to a hard SAT math question really be that easy? No way. Get rid of it. Well, what about B? Joe's thinking, okay, Jasmine buys an apple pie. She eats 2/5. She eats 2/5 more. The only thing that's remaining is 1/5, right? No way. Way too obvious. Way too easy. Get rid of it too. So Joe Bloggs' answers are one type of trap answer. The other type of trap answer is what we call a partial answer. And a partial answer is what you get if you do about half of the math in a given question. So let's take a look at our problem. Jasmine buys a pie. She eats 2/5 of it. How much is left? Well, 3/5. But you know that Jasmine eats more of that pie later on. So can 3/5 really be our right answer? No way. Get rid of it. And now look at what we've done. With only minimal math, we've turned a hard question into a medium question in which our odds of getting it right are 50-50. We don't know whether the answer is C or D, but what we can do is guess. Anytime you can eliminate at least one answer choice, you should always guess. So go ahead, pick one. As it turns out, the answer here is D. But even if you got it wrong, you have a 50-50 shot. And if you guess enough consistently throughout the SAT with a 50-50 shot, you're going to improve your score. So why does Joe miss these SAT math questions? Well, first off, he's rushing. He's making careless mistakes. So you should be methodical in your approach to the math section. Make sure you spend enough time on the easy and medium questions so that you don't get any of them wrong. Only then should you move on to the hard questions or the tricky questions. Second, Joe gets these questions wrong because he approaches the questions exactly the way that the test writers want him to. And on hard questions, ETS wants Joe to play with the numbers, to fiddle with them, so that they can write these trap answers that look appealing to Joe. So one way for you to be more accurate is to get rid of the trap answers, eliminate the Joe Bloggs answers and the partial answers, and you're going to boost your score. Let's talk about another way for you to be more accurate on the SAT math section.
Vroom, vroom. Okay, time for a pop quiz. How far is New York City from Los Angeles? What if I were to tell you it's 25 miles? No? All right, what about 100,000 miles? Okay, that's too big, obviously. But you know that the answer is between 25 miles and 100,000 miles. Well, this is exactly the power of ballparking. Now, you have a great advantage when it comes to the SAT. It's a multiple choice test, so you know that one of the answers has to be correct. So even if you don't know what the correct answer is, if you know the range in which the answer must fall in, you can still get the correct answer. So what am I talking about? Let's look at an example. Number 10. On line L, the length of BC is 1.5 times the length of AB. If the length of AC is 30, then what is the length of BC? Well, what is it that we know on this problem? Well, first of all, we know that the figure is drawn to scale. How do we know this? Well, there's no note at the bottom saying that the figure is not drawn to scale. Also, we know that the line of AC is equal to 30. Cut this line exactly in half, and you get two pieces, 15 and 15. Now, does AB and BC equal one another? Are they cut exactly in half? No. It says that BC is 1.5 times AB, meaning that BC is longer than AB. So the answer for BC, the length of BC, must be longer than 15. So if we look at the answer choices, we can get rid of A, B, C, and D, and we're left with the correct answer, E. Now I know you're anxious to see the math way to do this problem. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, what is it that we know? We know that AB plus BC is equal to 30, right? We also know that BC is 1.5 times AB. With a little bit of substitution, we can say that AB plus 1.5 AB is equal to 30. Combine these two, 2.5 AB is equal to 30. Divide both sides by 2.5, and AB is equal to, do some calculation here, that's 12. Now immediately we can get rid of answer choice C because that's a partial answer. The question's not asking for AB, it's asking for BC. Watch out for these partial answers on the SAT because you want to make sure that you answer the question at the end. Well, just to get BC, we just have to subtract 12 from 30, and we're left with 18. And the answer is E. There you go, the math way. So if you're sitting and taking the SAT exam, which method would you prefer? Ballparking or the math way? Ballparking? Not only did ballparking help you save time, it helped you avoid that careless mistake, that C over E. Now, ballparking may not help you avoid all the wrong answers all of the time, but it will help you improve your